Seawolves win their home opener. That's women's soccer. The other kind of football starts on Thursday. And Allie Kennedy makes an appearance as well. All that and more when the sports section starts now. And welcome to the sports section, Long Island's longest running call-in sports talk show. And I guess either last week or this week was the official beginning of the fall semester because fall sports are underway here at Stony Brook. In particular, Zach Wilson, one of my co-hosts, Ken Fermin, my other co-host, I'm Matt Mankiewich. Well, Zach got a chance to finally get a home game in at Laval Stadium, and the Seawolves women's soccer team did not disappoint. Zach?
Yeah, you're right, man. They really didn't disappoint. We'll pretty much start off on the blue like that. Stony Brook in their third game of the season, finally playing at home. Of course, they were supposed to do that last week against Quinnipiac, but because of Hurricane Henry, they were unable to do that. That game got canceled and delayed the home opener to today. Playing against the Columbia Lions, who they didn't look very sharp against since the beginning of this century, but now they did get some sharpness in today. And all it took was a goal, a minute and a half into half number 2, and it came from Alyssa Francis off the assist from Chelsea DuPont and Carrie Pearson. And I figured that that's pretty much one of the best things that you would look at as far as seeing what these playmakers are capable of. And what better in this Seawolves Sunday home opener, getting the win. It was really a great game for Stony Brook today, getting that lone goal and the defense that came along with it.
The Seawolves really needed that victory, and I think Coach Bischoff is listening in today. He's definitely thankful at home right now. Sitting down, reflecting on this week, that they were able to get a victory. When, quite frankly, you could argue this Seawolves team should be 2-1 right now to start the season. They came off that scoreless draw against LIU, despite out-shooting the Sharks 19-6. And starting off the contest, wasn't a lot of offense in motion. Columbia really dominated the time of possession. When the Seawolves got the ball in the midfield, they'd move it up one or two passes, but ultimately the ball, they'd lose it or try to lose those tight battles in the midfield. It really wasn't until the second half where the Seawolves started to pick it up. And as you said, Carrie Pearson had a free kick, bounced off a defender about 20 yards out of goal, and Francis, just like she's done her entire career, like a magnet to the back of the net, finding a way to get a goal past Audrey Byrne, who herself had a great game for the Lions. And I think from there, the pendulum shifted in Stony Brook's favor, and the defense for the Seawolves really stepped up, just like the offense did in terms of getting up shots.
Yeah, it's really something that the defense was trying to work on after they gave up 5 goals in the loss to Hofstra. This was really the big step up that they needed. And Emerson Richmond Burke being able to produce a game high 4 saves compared to the 2 that Audrey Byrne had. I mean, she really wanted to make something of a redemption of her own after she allowed 2 goals in the first half. The Pride did not have a chance to come back for half number 2 to try and keep this game even as if anything, if possible, to stay in. She couldn't get the opportunity, but after that, these last 2 games against the Sharks and the Lions, it's been nothing but a fortress. And Stony Brook's defense able to back her up as well. You've been seeing players like Morgan Elliott and Emma Beattie that's been able to produce some plays defensively, keeping the ball away from the penalty area most times and the net, even so they couldn't really stop too many of the corner kicks from occurring. But once they get right near Richmond Burke, she either make the catches or she tosses them away, and she just lets her teammates do the rest of the work.
No, agreed. They do a great job, the defense of Stony Brook, preventing the ball from really getting in the penalty area. That 18-yard box, really where a lot of the damage is done by offenses. So the defense does a great job jockeying, staying on their opponent, staying in front of them, containing them, maybe trapping them with double team at the top side corner. They do a great job at, as you said, even if the other team retains possession, they're still kicking the ball out of bounds. They're clearing it. They're doing what needs to be done to push back against the offenses. And in turn, it's allowing them to study the opposing offenses better, get good reads on where they're trying to move the ball inside, usually on that top right corner in the penalty area, and they're able to swoop in and steal the ball and push it up midfield to kickstart their offense. So you're right, the players you named, I thought that led by Von Dragowski as well, coming back off a tremendous spring campaign. I think she really spearheads this Eagles defense. And BD as well, on Porat, who came in this season, Pearson, even Rachel Peters off the bench. They're going to be names you're going to need to remember in this 4-3-3 style of play for the Seawolves, where they're going to step up and going to have to against some of the better off the NCAA.
Yeah, freshman class so far for Stony Brook and their opponents have really been shining well. It all started back in the Thursday loss to Hofstra when Gabby Daniels was responsible for getting the first goal of the season for Stony Brook. And as you said, we've started to see playmakers in their first year, like Rachel Peters, that's really making a promising name for themselves. And if you did hear me today, I said that entering the game, the Seawolves were the Columbia Lions actually were 4-2-2 against Stony Brook all time, but that is actually D1. When you put it down to overall beyond when it goes back to pre-Division 1, Stony Brook was 10-10-4 against the Lions, and now they're 11-10-4. And this was their first win over Columbia since 2001. After 2001, it's been the Lions that have been the most dominating team against the Seawolves. And now today, this is exactly what Stony Brook wanted when trying to get history back on their side.
Defense, when the team just as a whole bending but not breaking, what this team I thought really does well again is finding their playmakers, and it's Francis's team at least for another season. We saw it in the tie against the Sharks. He had 8 shots, 3 of those that were on goal, which is the most she's taken since season when she had 7 against Vermont. So it's clear when the Seals are pushing up the offense and when they get in that penalty area, they're looking for Francis to score, and it worked out to perfection today for that. That she is a big reason why this team will find a lot of successes because of her ability to find the back of the net up close. And that's something a lot of other teams have understand is that for as good as some of the other players and passers this Seawolves team has, in terms of scoring, a big part of that offense comes off the boot of Alyssa Francis.
And personally, I think that the Seawolves defense was able to rise up to the occasion more than what was expected out of them today. The Lions were entering this contest after coming off of a tie, of course, but that tie featured 3 goals for both Columbia and their opponent in the St. John's Red Storm, who is in the same conference as the foe that Stony Brook will be facing off against next on Thursday. They'll be taking on the Providence Friars, both teams from the Big East. And after 3 goals from Columbia on Friday, they didn't get any today. So you can see just how after the 5 goals that Stony Brook gave up in Game 1, ever since then, no goals allowed. And really, that's all about, and that's really how the defense just been able to make those important rectifying factors.
No, agreed. And they've definitely stepped up, played a lot more tightly than they did in that game against Hofstra. They just really haven't allowed themselves to get beaten. You're not seeing too many fast breaks by the opposition in these games with Stony Brook following that Hofstra loss. It has been, for the most part, a defense that has been in front of the opposing offenses, and they've been getting their legs up when a opposing player tries to get across inside. And it's been a reason why we haven't seen as many shots from these other teams like we saw in Hofstra, despite, as we saw today, Columbia managing to outshoot the Seawolves. The defense has definitely stepped up, which is a positive sign. Now they got to keep stepping up because for as good as it is now, as well as Emerson Burke's play in between the pipes, they're still 4th in the conference overall in terms of goals allowed. And you got teams like Maine and Hartford that only have allowed 1 goal in their 3 games played this season.
And along with that, it's a 3-game road trip coming up for the women's soccer team. Thursday, as I said, they'll be playing against the Providence Friars up in Rhode Island. Then next Sunday, they'll be going right to Colorado to take on the Colorado Buffaloes. And that will not be an easy trek. Taking on a team from the Pac-12. Stony Brook trying to size up their ways against the Power 5 hasn't been in their favor, but A game like this could give them enough experience to continue chasing that three-peat. Then last but not least, September 9th, they head over to New Jersey at Teaneck. They'll be taking on Fairleigh Dickinson Knights before they come back home on September 12th to take on the St. Joseph's Hawks. That game will be at 1 p.m. We'll let you know whether or not we'll be on call for that game. So it's Stony Brook 1-1-1 now in their first 3 games of the season. Columbia falling to 0-1-1. We got women's soccer out of the way because they got themselves their win, especially the tie against LIU. And now we'll segue quickly over to men's soccer, who also found themselves on the bright side of their home opener and actually their first game of the season.
By the way, one thing, Zach, before you segue to men's soccer, WUSB.FM/sports has an updated schedule. So if you want to find out which games are going to air, you can go there. And it's also accessible via the main page, WUSB.FM. And the reason why I'm hesitating is because Chad Green just gave up a 2-run homer. So it's now 3-1 Oakland in the bottom of the 8th inning. But in any case, as we were saying, WUSB.FM/sports for all our upcoming broadcasts. Go on.
So, as I was saying before, we segue over to the men's soccer team, who also got themselves a 1-0 win in their home opener. And that was by an unsung hero by Jonas Bickus. Stony Brook playing the fall 2021 season after coming off of a pretty damaging spring season that featured only one win against NGIT, but this really was the type of win to begin the season that they want to try and use over the long haul.
I don't think the team needed a win and an opening day victory more than the men's soccer team. That includes the football team, includes the other soccer team, volleyball, heck, even cross country that's coming back in a week. This team really needed to start off on the right foot. I mean, just going back through the program, ever since they won the regular season title back in 2018, it's been all downhill from there. And as you just put, past couple seasons have been miserable for them. 5 wins in about 28 games over the past couple of seasons. This team has really struggled at just in goals. They were last in the conference last season in goals scored. So with the victory, it's their first season opener win since 2016, where they beat LIU 1-0. And you're right, an unsung hero in terms of a freshman forward named Jonas Bickus finding the back of the net with about 8 minutes to go. That's a big sign and a positive sign, especially for Coach Ryan Anatole, because freshman. So to see a freshman, one of his more new prospects, take in the limelight and strive in that role is a big plus for this team, because going back again past couple of seasons, we've seen the prospects Coach Anatole has brought in, and for as hyped up as they were, a lot of them really struggled in terms of living up to the roles set previously by other greats in the men's soccer program. And there's been a reason why this program has struggled the past couple of seasons. So to see again the lone starting freshman get that goal, I think is big for the future of the men's teams this season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Ken. And really, when was the last time that both the men's and women's soccer team's first goal of the season came from a freshman? Bickus and Daniels alike. I wonder if they'll be spending any time together as they both talk about how they're pretty much the first players for their team to get a goal to begin a season.
A couple of freshman phenoms, maybe.
It's going to be one funny topic. I'm sure they'll one day probably discuss about, probably among us as well.
Yeah, but to your point, and for two teams where we've seen a roster overhaul for the most part, both of them really only have 1 or 2 veterans from the past couple of seasons. Fernandez for the men's side, Francis DePont for the women's side. See these freshmen step up, and especially, again, going back to Bickus, Stony Brook struggled that first half, especially offensively. It looked like a routine game that we've seen the past couple of seasons. The Seawolves get 0 shots in the first half. The Sharks outshoot them 7-0. If the offense can't get anything going, anytime a pass, goes up in the offensive zone, there's 2 or 3 Shark defenders right there to just swarm up, take the ball back. and they keep pushing on their attack. And it was a great defensive showing by the men's side as well. And they had, as I said, for the women's, they really had a bend, don't break attitude, especially in a defensive front. And that was the reason why LIU, despite having those 7 shots in the first half, they only had 1 shot on goal. So for the Seawolves, they really managed to control the game in that second half. And overall as well, winning possession about 52% of the time. And as a result, they were able to produce a few shots on goal, and Beekes was the one to find the back of the net. So it's definitely a big confidence booster for this team. And I think it just tells everyone too, this is a team that can find ways to create a lot of wins by, as I said, having that spectacular defense, bending, not breaking. That's really the key to it all, because this Seawolves team has fallen behind so far times over the past couple of seasons. So for them to get off on the right foot for a change, it's a positive sign. And they're going to have a big test against Austria tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be quite an interesting battle to see. And Hedman Kaiser going to try and once again rise to the occasion of his ability to play a fortress, to create a fortress when it comes to trying to make plays right at the net. Well, this was one of his best performances in a while. His first clean sheet since the Seawolves defeated NJIT back on March 12th, 12-0. And for the Seawolves, their first home win since October 26, 2019. It did not produce a home win during the shortened spring season just a few months ago. But this was definitely all the confidence that Ryan Anatol's team need, and they'll try to, once again, build on that, trying to go to an interesting 2-0 start once they host the Pride tomorrow. Game will be at 6 p.m. We'll be on for that same time as well on 90.1 FM WUSB Stony Brook. Men's and women's soccer getting some good taste over the past week, and they'll try and continue to carry that success over into this upcoming week. So
now, guys, we have something else going on later in the week, of course, Thursday night. Opener for football against New Hampshire, 6 p.m. as well. But we also have coming up in a couple of minutes an interview that you guys did with Ali Kennedy earlier in the week. So what do you want to do? You want to run that until the top of the hour and then pick up football there, or do football now and push Ali back a little bit?
Why don't we go ahead and get our opinions about this upcoming Thursday out of the way, and then we'll get going into Ali Kennedy.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so yeah, Thursday is going to be the first game of the season for the Stony Brook football team, and they're looking to try and make an improvement compared to the last 2 seasons. Thursday, they are hosting the New Hampshire Wildcats, and apparently that game has just started to take a very interesting turn. The Wildcats starting quarterback, Max Brosmer, has been declared out for that game due to a leg injury that he suffered during preseason in some capacity. And they're going to have their backup quarterback, Brett Edwards, start for him. And it's going to be very interesting to see what he'll try to do in the absence of Max Brosmer, if he can try and keep New Hampshire's other weapons looking tight, or if him being not that much experienced probably could be a little bit damaging to New Hampshire trying to get themselves back into the playoffs after their 17 straight seasons of making it was abruptly stopped in 2018. This is really going to be quite more of an interesting game now than a lot of people would have expected. It's
the right, I said it in previous broadcasts, it's the right move, I think, by the conference to have this game be the opener, and for both teams, because these are 2 teams that, as you put, had a lot of success over the past 15 years, and it's really dissipated over the past 3-ish seasons. As you said, the Wildcats not making the playoffs since missing the playoffs for the first time in 15 years since 2018, and for the Seals as well, having a really disappointing performance over the past couple of seasons. There's a lot of hype around this football team on the island, and they struggled to live up to it over the past couple seasons, I think, because a lot of teams were really able to adjust and adapt to their style. And especially offensively, they shut them down for a large portion of those games, as we saw. And defensively, were really able to put the hammer down against the Seawolves offense. So I think this team's coming in with a different mindset, a different view, where obviously every team wants to win, be top the standings. For the Seawolves, I think it's just picking up where they left off from that game against UAlbany and just continue to build the pieces and find those pieces that fit in the team to get them those victories.
Yeah, and for New Hampshire, they're trying to get themselves a better return after the spring season for them. It was just only one game, and it was back on March 5th or 6th, actually, against UAlbany. It resulted in a 24-20 loss, and then after that, COVID-19 pretty much stopped their season altogether. They couldn't really play any other games afterwards, and so they couldn't even make the playoffs either. So Stony Brook is right now projected to finish 10th in the CAA poll. They're going to be an underdog for the first time since 2017 in that regard, when they 17 actually, they were being an underdog in the CAA preseason poll for the first time since 2017. The last time that happened, they pretty much shocked everybody, finished second place in the CAA, being able to make the playoffs and go as far as the second round against their rival, the James Madison Dukes. So we'll see whether or not there's an opportunity for Stony Brook to try and take advantage of a somewhat weakened New Hampshire squad. While for the Seawolves themselves, they get Tyquil Fields coming back for one more season, Tyson Lawton entering another season with the team. You also get wide receivers in Khalil Newton, Delonte Helms, and Sean Harris Jr. You get Tyler DeVera, Hunter Hayek. In the defense, they'll also try to make a statement. Casey Williams, Elias Reynolds. Them, along with other playmakers, they're looking to try and give Stony Brook a 1-0 start to the season. And we'll see. And we're hoping to see them make it quite interesting for what could be a good crowd at Laval on Thursday night.
It's going to be rocking. It's going to be a fun atmosphere for sure.
Yeah, we can't wait to give it to you as well.
One thing that we mentioned last week, that a move was made, of course, that I find rather impressive, that Brian Collins, longtime coach at LIU Post, has joined the coaching staff this season. And I'm just wondering if, what his future is going to be, whether or not he's using this as a stopover to something bigger and better, or possibly moving up into something bigger and better should Chuck Peoria decide to retire at some future date. But the interesting thing here is he'll be making his debut on Thursday as well. And yes, this is going to be an opportunity to basically put the past 2 years behind them, because we've been through it over and over again, falling apart in the final month of the season 2 years ago. Last year, not even getting to play the final few weeks of the season. So it's been a mess. And finally able to start under normal circumstances, with a normal crowd, with a normal Thursday night in the normal month of September, is going to be a huge relief for them. And let's hope it stays normal. No COVID showing up among the team or anything like that. It's going to be very interesting how this season develops, considering how the last two went. But a win would be nice. And we're, of course, going to bring it to you on Thursday.
All right, so Stony Brook, New Hampshire, having their first game of the season, a conference battle right out of the blue, just like Nebraska and Illinois in the Big Ten yesterday.
It is an anomaly. You don't normally, of course, face conference opponents so much later in the schedule, and they won't face another one for quite some time. So,
and the last time that Stony Brook and New Hampshire were each other's first conference foe in the season was back in 2015 at Laval Stadium. Stony Brook masterful domination in that game against the Wildcats, 31-6. We'll see if they can try and use that little history on their side.
Well, they will not have another CAA opponent in the house. Well, actually, they will be on the road for the next CAA game, October 2nd at Rhode Island. In the meantime, they'll have a pair of road games at Colgate and at Oregon. Yes, Nike U. And then home against Fordham. And we have Colgate and Oregon penciled in because we may be doing those remotely, kind of like what everybody's doing these days. I mean, you take a look at your typical Yankee or Met game, and you have on a Yes Network game, half the people aren't even there. On a road game, they're doing it from Yankee Stadium. So if they can do it, we can do it. So that's what we're looking into right now. But I'm hoping we can. We can bring that to you. So,
Yep.
1026 on the sports section. As promised, we have a nice interview with Allie Kennedy, and we did promise everybody we'd get her back on at some future date, and the future date has arrived. So, we're going to duck out for a bit, live, and then this pre-recorded interview with Allie Kennedy from earlier in the week. Here it is, right here on the sports section. Matt Mankiewich, Zach Wilson, Kent Fermin, here until midnight. I hope everybody got that. It didn't sound that good on my end. But here we go. Allie Kennedy on WUSB.
This is Zach Wilson and Ken Fermin once again on another edition of Spotlight here on the sports section of WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM. And joining us today, we got Allie Kennedy, who's just coming back after 5 weeks playing Athletes Unlimited along with her former teammate and Kylie O'Miller. Allie, thank you for joining us. How's everything been since coming back home to the island?
It's been great. Thanks for having me, guys. I've had a great time in Maryland, but I'm definitely happy to be home. Happy to see some familiar faces, but overall, it was a great experience.
Talk to us about that experience where, again, you're going away from home and spending over a month training, practicing, getting to further establish these connections and relationships with 59 other incredibly talented women's lacrosse athletes.
I pretty much had an idea of who they were, but like you said, I got the chance to, make new relationships and learn things about people on a deeper level than just placing faces to names and all that sort of thing. And, I think coming out of college right away and going into it definitely gave me an advantage of that. The fact that I was playing every day. Some girls since COVID hadn't played in over a year and a half, and they would always complain about, practicing every day and everything. And I was like, this is actually a walk in the park compared to, Stony Brook. So it was definitely a lot of fun. And I made a lot of new relationships there that I'm really thankful for. And, I'm just happy that women's lacrosse, there's a future after college for, the players that want to continue to do it. And I think it's a really great opportunity to help grow the game in general, men's or women's. And I'm honored to be a part of the first season ever that was to do it. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and you were able to reunite with your former teammate, Kylie O'Miller. And during this final weekend or a few weekends ago, she selected you to be a part of it. And I'm sure that would have been quite an experience to once again play alongside a person who you helped make Stony Brook Women's Lacrosse look like a great program for the last few years. Tell us more about being able to once again hook up with Kylie and once again playing at your best level.
It was awesome. I'm really thankful that, Kylie picked me to be on her team. It's obviously really cool that, probably the face of women's lacrosse is Kylie O'Miller, and she thinks you're good enough to be on her team. So it's an honor. And I just love being able to have that Stony Brook connection and, even say that there is a Stony Brook connection and Stony Brook out, not help Stony Brook out, but, show that although it is a mid-major, it can compete with the top of the top programs no matter what are those Power Fives or big schools I usually hear of that, Stony Brook produces the same talent level and sometimes even better. So it was really exciting. And to be able just to play with her again, she had been my captain for 2 years when I was at Stony Brook and we were able to play together. So it was normal for me to, follow her lead and want to work hard for her. And I think she did a great job of handling herself and the stress that definitely comes with being a captain and having to pick a team.
And you two really did not miss a beat. It looked like the old Stony Brook days when you two were teaming up together for those weekends. And especially for yourself, it's not really just a connection that I thought was a reason why she picked you and picked you early, usually as one of the first 3 overall selections for her team. You were top 10 in goals, top 15 in MVP points overall. So, I mean, you definitely delivered on your end as well. And you said last time we spoke that you're not the typical midfielder, staying at 5'3", really utilizing speed over size. So what is it like to really showcase that you are a prime example of how this position is really changing, especially in the future of lacrosse on a national level?
I hope people take notice of it, because there are the midfielders that are there. They're really tall and they got like really long legs and just long limbs in general. And you usually see those girls taking the draw and they just have an arm length that doesn't stop and literally can grab the ball, way higher than I could ever imagine. But to your point of, changing the viewpoint of what a typical midfielder is, I actually, after one of the games, had a girl come up to me and she asked me what some advice on, getting over her height and like how to push through that. So it was really like kind of a humbling moment for me to step back and be like, wow, okay, girls are actually taking notice of it. And I can help inspire, girls who maybe lacking in height or aren't the tallest on the field or aren't the tallest midfielders on their team, and inspire them to be the best somewhere else, whether that's speed, dodging, shooting, ground ball play, just hustling all around. You get born like with height. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, but work ethic is something that's deep inside you. So I just tell them to let that come out of them and show people that you're going to be the hardest worker on the field, regardless of your height.
How do you think this feels like to gain that type of popularity, especially seeing how other players, like Kylie, who has developed that into something special to encourage lacrosse players? How do you see yourself working on something similar to that?
I just think it's awesome. No matter win or loss, I always want to go in the stands and greet fans or people who know me, have any questions about the game. Like, I will never turn away anyone that needs advice or wants a picture or something for me to sign, because it is still an unreal experience to me that, people know who I am and like look up to me, because I definitely have a ton of role models in my life that I would have liked to meet. So the fact that, I could be that for someone is really awesome. And, my parents came to every single game, and I'd be up in the stands talking to them after the games over the last 5 weeks, and girls would come up to me and, they'd have the biggest smiles on their face, and my mom and dad would be taking pictures of me talking to them. So it's just really cool. And I just hope to play lacrosse in college or anything like that, but I just want them to be confident in themselves and, help inspire female athletes in general that, being good doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you should be cornered in the way that some girls are, and that just to be who they are. So that's really my big thing, because having the chance to be on such like a huge platform with CBS Sports picking us up and also Fox Sports really inspires me that girls can turn on the TV and watch the sport that they play finally.
On top of that as well, news recently coming out that a second season will be confirmed. How excited were you for that? And did you feel like you knew there would be a second season?
I hoped there'd be a second season, but you never know.
Right.
Because lacrosse it's not a football, it's not a soccer. It's nowhere near baseball or anything like that. So, it's all about like Athletes Unlimited did such a great job of giving us everything they needed, housing us, getting us out there, like getting us on TV and everything like that costs money, but we have to, make some in return to give back to Athletes Unlimited. So it was like nerve-wracking to see like how the viewership was, if people watched, if people liked it. But it really showed in the last weekend that we were there. The last game of the season was a fan game, and the stands were packed, and it was crazy. And it was, one of the most packed. The stadium didn't have two sides to it, so it was only one side, but I'm not even kidding. There was no room for anyone else to be there. So it was really cool to see that we had that effect. And I hope that it translated, on the TV as well.
Oh,
and it's
it
not
absolutely
just like sending a link to your parents to be like, here's the stream, like watch it. Like you actually got to turn on your television and watch it. I know it's definitely easier for my grandpa to figure out than watching my college games. So
Right. And not even just
yeah.
the TV, but the social media aspect as well. Because I thought that's really where Athletes Unlimited thrived, was just how much social media impact all the players and all the fan support was.
Yeah, it was really cool. You know, I before Athletes Unlimited, I would always like admire how the PLL had their like content team. Like literally, if there was a play, it would be posted in the next 10 minutes or something like that. And they like always kept fans engaged and everything like that. And I think the Athletes Unlimited team did the same thing where people are running around trying to get content out. We were sent photos after games like almost immediately. We had so many photographers, so many video cameras in our face all the time. It felt really intense on the field while playing, that people were trying to capture everything that was going on the field. And it was really cool. And I have to give them credit because social media aspect now is definitely huge.
Along with Kylie, there were a lot of other star players that were really great when they were in college. There were some that you do remember playing against. I remember there was Sam Apuzzo when Stony Brook played against Boston College. There was also players that, while you were still in high school, made quite a name for themselves in college lacrosse, like Taylor Cummings, who was, of course, the eventual MVP and champion the entire Athletes Unlimited League in the first year. How excited were you to finally see some of those players after they played in college when you were still in high school, finally getting the chance to size yourself up against those top-notch experienced players?
I mean, it was really cool. I know Sam and Taylor both from playing US with them. So going in knowing some of the top names is really cool for me to be like, oh, like I could just casually start up a conversation with Taylor Cummings because we know each other, or same with Sam Apuzzo. Like, but on the outside, like everyone is very similar, very much like same personality kind of thing going on. So made the 5 weeks go by really fast in the sense that everyone hung out, everyone got along, and it didn't matter, reputation or anything. Everyone was there to play the sport that they loved, but it was definitely cool to, play against the best in the world and make plays against them. And you just have to know that they're really good. They're going to make plays against you as well. So, but I really, really like those two. And I always, find myself watching them and always being so impressed with their talent and skill level.
Yeah, that's my next question too, is because with the unique structure, we're going to get to that in a minute, the unique structure of the league and just the interchangeable rosters week in and week out, you got to play with virtually everyone in the league. So who were some of your favorite teammates? Who were some people you really looked forward to competing against every weekend? And also, who's someone that you didn't think you would have, or you realized you had a better connection with after playing with them than you went into that week of practice?
I think I really, really, really liked playing with Haley Warden. She went to JMU. She won the national championship. I think it was 2018 when the national championship was at Stony Brook. So sad for me, but good for her. Really like her. She took the draw. She's really awesome. Just a sweet person in general. I mean, there's no one, honestly, that I really looked forward to playing against just because everyone's so good. Where, when I hear like, oh, who do you look forward to playing against? I kind of think of like an easy matchup, but there were 0 easy matchups because the talent level was so crazy. But a connection that I had, I guess, was with the Parecka sisters, who I'm a big fan of. They're Long Island natives. They both went to Florida. I just seem to work very well with them. I think I'm very similar.
Agreed.
We're built kind of the same, and they just have that like gritty mindset as well. So I really liked playing with them as well.
I was going to say, they fed you quite a few great passes inside. You were really able to get some great one-on-one matchups with against the goaltender. Usually you beat her pretty well off some of their passes.
Also, another player that you had the honor of playing with in the Athletes Unlimited, Kayla Trainer. She has been through a lot in the last few years. Her spending the last few years as an assistant at Boston College, recently helping them win the national championship, especially thanks to Charlotte North's Tewaaraton season. Now she's being named the head coach for the Syracuse Orange, replacing Gary Gay, who's transferring over onto the men's side, seeing her play with you in Athletes Unlimited and now also gaining that coaching experience, what could you say about her being relentless in her experience being a top-notch player at Syracuse and her experience working with the ACC?
Yeah, she's unreal, and she's going to do great at Syracuse. I think she's just a top player. She's a great person. And, it's kind of deceiving because when you watch her play, she is so intense and she has so much passion and emotion behind everything she does. And then when you talk to her off the field, she's very soft-spoken and sweet and is really someone who will lend an ear whenever anyone needs help. So she's going to crush it at Syracuse. And I had the honor to be on the same team as her twice. And every single time she had the ball, I was like, oh, automatic goal. Like, she's going to score right now. And every time I played against her, I'm like, holy crap, she's about to score. Like, we got to defend her. So it was really awesome. And I'm super happy for her that she got to go back to, Syracuse, where she had an unreal career and gets to kind of make it full circle and be the head coach. And, hopefully, although that program's already been to the national championship, I don't think they've ever won one. So my fingers are crossed for her. And I wish nothing but the best for her. She's a great person. I really like her as well.
Something, too, I really wondered as well is you got, as we mentioned, all these talented athletes who fulfill so many positions outside of the league, whether it's coaching, being assistants, some were recent graduates such as yourself. Maybe you're Kylie O'Miller, you're ambassador of the game. So you're traveling everywhere and, hosting your own camps and things of that nature. So with all of that, what were practices like?
Yeah, the practices were about an hour and a half long. And they were interesting because 3 games a weekend with that format and the new rules and the speed and physicality of the game really takes a toll on your body. So our only day off was Monday, really. Wow. And we were right back to practice on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So practices were way more laid back than you'd think because we wanted to kind of rest up for the 3 games that we had ahead of us and just going over game plan and kind of scouting the people on the other teams and their tendencies because you get to know them pretty well since everyone pretty much plays with everybody. So it'd be funny to hear girls talk about their friends being like, she'll never put her stick in her left hand or she hates clearing the ball. Like, I love her, but she hates, shooting low or something like that. So it was definitely interesting. It was more mental than a physically taxing practice.
It's so unique, something we've never seen before. And in my opinion, I thought it was just incredible to watch. And a big fan of the rules, 8-minute quarters, 10v10 gameplay, 60 seconds on the shot clock. And as opposed to the 120, 65-yard field we see in college, 90 by 60. What was it like going into the league and having to, adjust to those changes?
It was a little bit intimidating and confusing, but it was also a learning process, I think, for everyone. I don't know if it looked like that on the TV, but there was really no set in stone rules or rule book. It was just based off of, the ref's kind of opinion, or it was very subjective. They have refed in the NCAA, so they obviously know the sport of women's lacrosse and the rules. But since it is a higher level, those rules definitely do change. Like, there was no shooting space, there was no 3 seconds, so you kind of see defenses sink into the 8. If you notice, there was no 12-meter arc, so it's a little bit different. And it made it faster, if that was even possible, but it did.
No, absolutely did.
And it was actually the coolest part about it was being able to review things and challenge things. That is such a game changer. And whether it goes your way or not, being able to review each goal or, each yellow card or something like that is...
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Yeah, it was really cool because I feel like I have a few of those plays in my head in college where I'm like, damn, if they could only just go back and review that.
Agreed. I
Yeah.
was going to say, too, just the physicality of the league. I mean, just last week, I remember you and Taylor Van Pelt really were going at it, even away from the ball as much as it was on the ball. The refs really didn't call much, but, you once again just lighted it up on the field. And again, seeing a physicality, which we don't really see that much in the college game.
Yeah. It's definitely easy to get heated in those moments when, they do let things go. It was definitely refreshing to not have the refs kind of dictate the game so much. But there were certain calls that obviously I'm not going to agree with everything the refs do, but I don't hate all the things that they do. So it's always a love-hate relationship with them. But yeah, that moment got a little heated. I got cheap shotted, so that's why I was on the ground, and I was not very happy about it. But
That's fair.
It's the rules of the game. Well, the no rules of the game, I guess, and you can play to them or you can shy away from them. And I was just playing to what the refs would let me do, and it seemed to work out at least once or twice for me.
Since there are a lot of players, a good enough amount of teams in this league, is that the only thing is that everybody, it was all in one venue at the Maryland Soccerplex, which is pretty. I'm sure this is probably something unusual since you were more used over the last few years at Stony Brook playing games that were considered home on the road, especially North Carolina and Syracuse and all. So how does it feel any different, like playing against these?
It was cool being on the same field and like having a stadium and everything like that, but it wasn't quite the same as a home game at Stony Brook. I'm a little bit biased, but I love that stadium. I love Laval, and I don't really think much or many games can beat, the feeling of running out the tunnel. And it was really cool, though, to be able to go to the same field every time. And whether you considered home or away, that really wasn't a factor. And playing these amount of games at the same field and like almost virtually against like the same teams or people, it really went way smoother and better than I thought it was going to be. Like, I really did not expect it to feel as real of like lacrosse games. I thought it would be more of like, like a fantasy team or like a scrimmage every time. But like towards the end, especially, like it was getting like emotional and heated and people were like really trying to win. So I was not expecting that. I was expecting it more to be like, yeah, who really cares? But people were really, really, really going hard.
Especially online. Some of the comments, oh boy.
Oh, I would bring that whole thing to Long Island somewhere.
Yeah.
I know I'm a little bit biased, but it would sell out every weekend if they did that. That'd be my only change. I know it's probably not going to happen with like the available like venues or something, but I just know for sure that lacrosse is Long Island's such a hotbed for lacrosse that, people would definitely come to every single game. And, it was a bit of a drive from Baltimore. It was like an hour and a half away from Baltimore and like where U.S. headquarters are. So it was deep in Maryland, and I felt bad for my parents making that drive every weekend. So maybe we can cut them a break next year and bring it to Long Island. But that's really it.
I agree. John Patchstoff, you're listening. Let's make it happen. Long Island, Stony Brook, would love that Laval Stadium.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get the whole picture about moving Athletes Unlimited to Long Island, because we have acknowledged for years like how that has pretty much been the area where it has garnered the most experienced lacrosse players like you and Allie and Ortega, and the players who've also played there, against North Carolina, and like Ortega and Hodge. There's been a lot of phenomenal players who have also come from the island. So really, just how do you think it would make them feel closer to home in that regards?
I'd feel like a home game every weekend, to have your family, extended family come. Like I know my whole family used to come to all my Stony Brook games because it was 30 minutes away. And regardless of where it is on the island, I think my family would be happy to make a drive, sacrifice 40 minutes, maybe an hour if you hit traffic to come watch another family play a professional sport. But I think all the Long Islanders would be really grateful for that opportunity.
I really think we're seeing the next steps in where this game is going. So where do you see the game of lacrosse going and continuing to improve on both college games, especially, and professionally?
I hope it keeps growing. I hope that it becomes a powerhouse, and I hope that, it gets the recognition it deserves. And the fact that, like, maybe one day far down the line, that girls who play lacrosse professionally don't have to have another job, don't have to, have this be their part-time job where their professional salary would be enough to be sustainable and live a life off of. But I know that's in many, many years to come. But that's one thing I'm really hoping for, because that's when I feel like you're really making it, when there's multi-million-dollar deals going down for drafts and stuff. But that's way in the future. That'd be my hope for the game. I just want to keep growing it and, blazing the trail for the years to come. And although it may not feel like it right now, but later on in life, it'll be very cool to, have the honor to be a part of the very first season of Athletes Unlimited Lacrosse. And it's something that I'll definitely talk about forever.
And also with that, since you're going to wait probably a whole year for the second season to begin, just like college, there should be probably more athletes that could probably come for the second season, and you may know some of them who are really dying to get there. They probably include your former teammate Rain Sabel, who is staying at Stony Brook for another year, and after how she looked defensively over the last 2 years with the Seawolves, seeing her along with other potential candidates for next summer, how excited would you be to have them join the fray?
Oh, I'd be really happy to have like a little Seawolf squad out there, and show that, again, that Stony Brook produces the highest level of talent. And if you come to Stony Brook, you have a very good shot of making it professionally, and that's all I could really hope for. I always want to give back to that program because it has done so much for me. So if that means, I have brought so many clothes during those 5 weeks, and 90% of them were Stony Brook stuff. Not because that's all I have, but because I love to wear it and I'm proud of, my college and my program. And so being able to have more of my Seawolf fam with me professionally would definitely be really cool.
Just seeing the game progress faster, and in a sense where you're going to see more offense. And do you feel this is right for the growth of lacrosse? Do you feel confident this is really going to get you more eyes on the game?
Yeah, definitely. I think people want to watch a fast-paced, intense, higher scoring game, although some of the games weren't very high scoring in Athletes Unlimited.
Yeah, the first one was 11-3 in your team's favor.
Yeah,
and that was a real fast game.
It was it's definitely fast-paced, high intensity, and that's what people want. If you ever look back to the brutal days of early women's lacrosse, there was no shot clock, and teams' plans were to just stall. Literally, they'd go up 3 goals, win the draw, sit on the offensive end, and stall. No one wants to see that. No one would watch that if they would see one team passing the ball around in circles for an hour. No, they'd turn the TV right off. They'd rather watch something else. So I think the pace of play, the new rules, the new style will help draw eyes to the game, and the less amount of rules there are will also keep fans entertained, because they won't ask questions of like, why they stop, what's that call, what's going on, why did the ball just go to the other team, or something like that. So I think it's what's best, and this type of format will definitely grow the game to my expectations one day. We'll see.
This may once again play into your bias about Stony Brook, but you know how great of a high-scoring team that they have been over the last few years, and seeing how these rules could probably even shake up them as well. Could you expect more goals from them in the next few seasons in each game?
Yeah, if they change the shot clock, or because I know the NCAA just approved quarters for the women's side. So that
Yes,
will
that is
be
true. Yeah.
definitely be an interesting change. I think Spallina will have at least like a quarter minimum goals he's expecting. So I definitely could see, higher scoring games from the Stony Brook side. Or if does become too fast and turnovers start happening, then I'm not really sure, but it's something I'm excited to see.
Let's say that you were still in college lacrosse and these rules were happening while you were there. How would you feel about playing under those circumstances? Of course, you're going to be doing that in pro as well.
I would be a little upset just because I do like the 30-minute half format because that's what I've played my entire life. And the only time I wouldn't play that way is when I would go to US and now obviously with the pros. But it's really not that terribly different. I just think for myself mentally, I would like have checklists for myself being like, okay, I want this amount of draws in one quarter, this amount of shots, maybe this amount of goals or ground balls or something, to keep myself on track and set little personal goals. But I don't know, it would definitely take a little bit of adjustment. And I think that practice plans would definitely change as well. Because now it does allow for more rest time and for you to exert a little bit more effort in a shorter amount of time. But yeah, I don't think I'd be really excited at first. It would definitely take my stubborn self a few games to get adjusted to it.
I don't know. I still feel like if you're playing, you got a hat trick probably your first 3 or 4 games at least. Yeah, but before we let you go, we do want to talk a bit of hockey and primarily Rangers talk. Big fan, one of the biggest in Stony Brook and on the island where there's a lot of Isles fans. So got you some unfavorable reviews there. But yeah, Rangers made a lot of moves over the offseason from the last time we spoke. And I want to get your thoughts on first, before anything, Henrik Lundqvist, probably the greatest goaltender in Rangers history, retiring. Your thoughts?
He was a family favorite in my family. Well, one, because I know hockey goalies historically wear number 30, but he wore it the best, especially in the red, white, and blue. And the fact that he's retiring is a sad, sad day. My brother is very upset, but I'm glad to not see him go anywhere else, if that makes sense.
Of course. You don't want to see him in the Capitals jersey.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I think that was pretty close.
Yeah.
I just, he was a huge part and reason that they did make that a Stanley Cup run a couple of years ago. And I'm sad that I won't ever see him play again, but I'm very thankful for him. And the fact that I don't think if we had him that year that we would have made it that far, but he's also very handsome. So
that is true. It's still Swedish genes, honestly. They are tremendous people. You're, of course, in 2014, making it to the Stanley Cup Finals. He had a tremendous. My favorite memory has got to be the helicopter save against Montreal, where I don't know how he turned into a pretzel and still managed to make the save. All incredible goals. As you said, you saw him live. So what were some of those memories there, being able to see him in action?
Oh my God, it was unreal. The fact that, first off, hockey goalies in general, how they sit or stand, I should say, and just throw their legs on the ground and the flexibility that they have in their hips is unimaginable to me. And the fact that they slam their knees on the ground, lacrosse players in general are known to have bad knees, and that it pains me to watch them. But being able to see him in person perform and have some of his best games it's breathtaking. It's really cool to see, and it kind of leaves you scratching your head like, how the hell does he make those saves, or how does he see the puck that's actually like 3 inches wide? It's coming at his face at like 100 miles per hour.
100 miles per hour, yeah.
Literally fearless. So
yeah, we got that Henrik. So since we got that Henrik Lundqvist question for the Rangers, what do you expect from the team once next season comes? Do you see anything improving with them trying to make another run at getting into the playoffs?
I hope so. I don't want to say this, but I actually, although they didn't, make it very far, I was, once the Rangers were out, I did watch the Islanders just because I was hoping for a New York team to to win, but now that season's over, I'm back to rooting for the Rangers and hoping that it's them.
Fair enough.
We've had a couple down years, so I'm hoping that we are slowly getting back to the 2014 era of a Stanley Cup run again. I know my brother would really appreciate that, and I'm just really looking forward to it. And I don't know, I've never told you guys this, but there's a curse. I think I curse the Rangers because anytime I like a player, they get traded. So Ryan Callahan was my first favorite Rangers, and then Brady Shea was also one of my top. Yeah,
I don't blame you at all. Oh, talk about a guy who was so underutilized, man.
So I guess that means you wouldn't. So I guess you wouldn't want to tell us who the current guy on the Rangers you would like.
I pray to God it's not Panarin.
Being traded.
No, I even told my brother, I'm not even going to pick a favorite this year because all they do is leave. So
yeah, just withhold it. Don't even think it.
Was last year Buchnevich then, or Di Giuseppe?
It's ever since Brady Shea, I was like, okay, I'm not doing it.
You had to stop. I don't believe it at all. Yeah, a lot of roster changes, especially in that bottom six. Buchnevich, Di Giuseppe out, Fred Halliday taken by Seattle, and in with Barclay Goodrow from Tampa. Ryan Reeves is, I think, on our fourth line. He's going to be there in the Washington game to probably pick a fight with Tom Wilson. So there's a reason to watch. He's going to, I guess, block defensively fine. And he's going to punch people a lot.
That's what I like to see. Listen, I'm always here for a guy that, if he wants to take a puck to the face to stop a goal and then throw the gloves off to fight someone who cheap shotted another teammate, I'm always down to have that guy on my team.
Yeah,
I still can't get that. I still can't get that game out of my head where in the first second, that fight breaks out between the Capitals and the Rangers. Of course, everybody expected it. Did you expect it?
No, but I'd love to see when you ever see them talk before and they just kind of agree to do it and the whistle blows, they just drop the gloves and they go right for it. That
the refs always let players just lash and help from time to time. Sometimes they won't let them. There's sometimes that they will.
I love it.
Agreed. Yeah. I think just finally with the Rangers, we'll get a more, I guess, in-depth question here, just using your athletic experience and insight only you have. Is this Rangers team a lot of young blue line, a lot of young players on that blue line? Do you think that helps or hurts a team where you got a lot of youth on some of those prime positions in the midfield, or in this case, I guess, in the middle of the ice?
I can see both sides just from my experience of fresh legs, fearless kind of. The fact that they, although it is the highest level, that they may not be scared to make mistakes that seasoned players would be of double hesitating or something like that. But also, I think experience definitely plays a big role when you have your toughest games. In Stony Brook, we always relied on our seniors, although freshmen made really big plays and stepped in during games. But when push comes to shove, you always want to rely on your seniors. So I think it's good and bad. Maybe they will show something different that the Rangers haven't had in the past, and it will throw teams off. And then also the seniority on the other side will help, the new guys kind of form in and get used to the style of the team. But I'm excited for it. I'm here for the young players. I always love watching TV and being like, oh, well, he's 19 years old. And I'm like, wow, that is so impressive.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be really a fun season to watch. It'll be interesting. If you're a Rangers fan, you'll really want to hope that something big starts happening. So, one last question. It's going to be another year until Athletes Unlimited comes back for year number 2, but I'm sure you'll have a lot to fill in, starting with this fall. We talked with Kylie also about this. Once again, taking care of being part of the USA team. How do you feel about, once again, having that opportunity?
Oh, I think it's great. I'm really looking forward to it. Although it was 5 weeks long, it went by super fast. And I already miss a lot of the girls there. And seeing them every day and, outside of lacrosse, I had my dog with me there, and I know so many other girls had their dogs. Me and Kylie always had puppy play dates, but getting to meet them and their dogs and seeing everyone every day, it was really cool. And it helped me kind of adjust, you know, going from the student athlete life in Stony Brook to then that. So I'm really looking forward to it. Again, it's been a dream of mine since I can remember. And I'm just so happy that, you know, I can still say I'm a professional athlete and that it wasn't just a one-hit wonder, 1 year kind of thing. And I have something to look forward to and train for outside of the U.S. team. So I'm really, really happy and thankful. And I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to see if there's any changes or if it stays the same. It ran amazingly. So I'm excited.
We're very excited to see what more is going to come up with you. And we want to once again thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on again. You guys rock.
Guys, that was epic. I am blown away. First of all, Allie's always been a great guest every time we've had her. But that was a really, really good interview you guys did with her. Allie Kennedy, legendary Stony Brook Seawolves lacrosse player, and now a professional, and will, of course, be back at it next year. And it's great staying close to the alumni. Also, guys, stay close to the current players as well. We'll be doing that as the season goes on here at WUSB Stony Brook. But, guys, again, a triumph.
It's definitely fun always getting a chance to catch up with some alumni, and next week we do the same with Kylie O'Miller, the other representative of Stony Brook and Athletes Unlimited. For Heather Kennedy, she's practically, earned a spot on this show with how often she's been appearing over the past couple months. She's someone just so great to talk to, down to earth, and I think the great thing about having her on is just how, besides personable and how well she is in terms of explaining the sport of lacrosse to those who both do have a big background and those who may not have the best background behind it, she's always authentic and is always going to say what's on her mind, whether it's good or bad regarding the subject, and doesn't really hold back in most cases. We talked about how, she had a bit of an issue with some of the refereeing where they let things go on one hand, but on the other, she was okay with it because that allowed her to really battle in the trenches and win a lot of those tight one-on-one battles. So she's someone who I think really opens up the game of lacrosse to those casual viewers and gets eyes on the sport with her tremendous playmaking ability. And it's just great to see, after covering her at Stony Brook, strive for the professional leagues like we knew she would.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I mean, really, just watch what Kylie Miller has been capable of in the last few years. And at Stony Brook, I was there for her last 3 years with the Seawolves, and when I started getting into lacrosse, I just really took immediate notice of how much of a playmaker that she has been, especially when I officially met her for the first time after Stony Brook with a narrow defeat against Colorado a few years ago. I think Stony Brook was probably number 2 or something, and Colorado was number 4. It was pretty much an elite top 5 battle to watch, low scoring, but the team really got the job done. And seeing how many fans she had in front right there at Laval Stadium that night was just really inspiring to see.
Yeah, we're talking about Allie, but Kylie's the same way, where, Kylie even more so as a representative of the sport of lacrosse, where she's hosting clinics, hosting camps, and we'll talk to her more about that next week. But yeah, you want to talk about 2 great representatives for the game of lacrosse. Allie Kennedy, Kylie Miller. It's hard pressed to find 2 better representatives of that. And Allie Kennedy's a Rangers fan, so we know.
Well, not only that, they're great representatives of Stony Brook University. The athletic department needs to do more with them. I mean, yes, the current players, great. But also, I've always been a big fan of engaging the alumni more. I've always been that way. But in the marquee sports, so to speak, you had that going on. The men's lacrosse team, they kind of did it on their own. Frank Barilli basically started an alumni association entirely on his own, and, of course, was a broadcast partner with me on the games. But he was the guy who try to keep the alumni involved, and far too often, unfortunately, a lot of his efforts were ignored. And that's wrong. That's got to be corrected. And I think that's got to be the case with every sport. Now, the coaches do try to keep the alumni engaged as best they can. But that's got to be done on the official level as well. And, like, for example, homecoming. The baseball team has an alumni game. Men's lacrosse has an alumni game. Women's lacrosse needs an alumni game if they're not doing it already. These are things that, first of all, most importantly, keeping the alumni engaged at Stony Brook University as a general rule has been a challenge. They complain about not getting enough money from the alumni. Well, you don't make the effort. You're not like, look at the Ivy League schools where you go specifically for the alumni network. Nobody goes to Stony Brook because of the alumni. That's got to change.
Yeah, well, seeing the alumni thrive. We spoke about O'Miller and Kennedy on the women's side, but yesterday, the National Lacrosse League, Indoor Box Lacrosse North America, we saw 3 alumni get drafted in the 2021 entry draft. So quickly just shouting out 3 recent graduates in Mike McCannell, who's drafted 5th overall to the San Diego Seals as a transition player. Pat Cashawk, who
part
we
of
spoke
it,
to a few weeks ago.
Cashawk's a perfect example. Yeah. Cashawk was being prospected long before he even got to Stony Brook because he's Canadian and showed a lot of proficiency at the box game, so they had a target on him from the beginning. What's that?
Yeah, I was chiming in on how great of McCannell as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for Pat, someone who's been playing box games since organized at 14, probably earlier than that. But him getting drafted in the first round as well, he's going to play for Albany. And Kyle Hebert, the goalkeeper, getting drafted in the 5th round to Buffalo. So 3 top potential candidates who I think are really going to strive in their roles.
Also, it seems to be a tradition here at Stony Brook. One guy gets in, recommends a friend of his from wherever they're from originally, and they join up with Stony Brook as well. Because that's what happened with Jordan McBride and Kevin Crowley, both from the Vancouver area, New Westminster. They had the New Westminster Salmon Bellies, which is they've got multiple levels of lacrosse teams. But, again, box players. And they were recruited at Stony Brook, and the rest is history with them. But that's where you build it up. That's where you build the network up. And coaching changes, oftentimes those connections, I guess, fall by the wayside because new coach, new connections. You know what I mean? But I think that the Seawolves, as a general rule, are starting to nurture that a little more because the other thing about it is alumni contribute money. That's where the fundraising comes from. You have to stay in touch with these people so you can hit them up for money. So, we have 11:14 on the clock here and 32 seconds. And the Yankees lost twice in a row. Now, after winning 13 in a row, they split a 4-game series with the Oakland Athletics in Oakland. That won't be seeing them again until possibly the postseason. But I'm not going to get into the Yankees just yet because there's another controversy going on in baseball. And it's with today's Mets-Nationals game. Now, good news for the Mets. They took 2 out of 3 from the Nats.
Actually, one
bad news.
How about that?
Yeah, and they hit. Amazing.
Yeah, it was really tough being able to get over that hangover of that really tough stretch against those powerful West Coast teams and the Giants and the Dodgers.
But they went 2-10 against them. If they'd gone 6-6 against them, people would have been happy. Okay? But most importantly, their next wave of opponents is against Nationals and Marlins. They hit the Marlins doubleheader on Tuesday and continue on from there. But that's not what we're going to be talking about, unfortunately, because Javy Baez, new acquisition for the New York Mets, hopefully they want to sign him. He becomes a free agent.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good player. But he made this thumbs down gesture at fans for booing them throughout all this stretch. Now, some people say, hey, these are professional athletes. They're trying all the time. Give them a break. And I would say that about collegiate athletes. They're trying all the time and not getting paid. Give them a break. Professional athletes, no. New Yorkers, as far as sports fans are concerned, we're not Philadelphians. We're not Bostonians. We don't go nuts like those people in those cities do. Okay, we don't have a courtroom set up, although there is a police station set up in MetLife Stadium. It's not. They don't have the court set up like they do with the Eagles or did with the Eagles at the Vet. We're not that crazy. But there is one thing that a New York fan hates: when he feels that the team is not putting out its best effort. And whether they are putting out their best effort and not getting results, or just losing consistently. I mean, at a Knicks game, when the Knicks were good, if the Knicks turn in a bad quarter, they'd get booed at the end of it. Patrick Ewing used to complain about it all the time, but that's the scrutiny you're under in New York. You turn in a bad quarter, you're going to get booed. I still remember a line from Derek Jeter that during the 2001 World Series, everybody knows when President George W. Bush threw out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium, and Bush, being a former team owner with the Texas Rangers, knew his baseball, but he was just shooting the breeze with Jeter in the Yankee clubhouse, and he says, "Any advice?" And Jeter says, "Don't bounce it. They'll boo you." So, yes, obviously tongue-in-cheek, but you get the idea that the Mets stunk up the joint for the entire month of August. They were in first place entering. There's 7 or 8 games back coming out.
7.5.
They haven't officially come out of August yet. Still a couple more days. But you get the idea that this August was hell to watch, to follow, if you're a Met fan. Torture. And Baez is complaining that the fans are upset because his team stinks. Sorry,
I don't know.
Not going to fly.
I don't know where to begin with this debacle. That's really the best term for it. Is you put, of all the people who are talking and frustrated with the fans, showing their disapproval for how disappointing this team has been on the most recent stretch, Javy Baez is probably the last guy who should be talking. Because
wins 207
is at 0, and as you put, is hitting just above the Mendoza line at 7. Okay, if he was replaced by an average MLB player or a minor leaguer, there would be no change according to the statistics in the Mets lineup, with or without him, offensively. He has, with the exception of this weekend, done nothing to prove that he belongs, besides in the starting lineup, that he is playing to his best. Now, this is his best. There's no way I could see any team, much less the Mets, trying to sign him in the offseason. This is a big stretch for him because it's a contract year. He's on essentially a 1-year lease, which is really only a couple months with the Mets to try to get a big contract out of it. And he is setting any potential conversations or extensions ablaze, talking like this and reacting like this, especially when he, as we just said, is on a real bad stretch. yeah, he performed well this weekend. It really doesn't impress me when you perform well against the third or fourth worst team in the National League. It's not like it's the Nationals that won the World Series a couple years ago, and you have Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, and so many of these other great pitchers. They got minor leaguers starting for them. Okay, it's nice that he almost hit for the cycle, almost, by the way. But it really doesn't impress me when you act upset at fans for rightly being embarrassed at the Mets' performance. As we said, it's not like they went 6-6 or even 5-7. They went 2-10 against teams that, should they make the playoffs, they're going to be facing. There's no confidence right now in the Mets fan base for most of these players, Baez included. And I think worst of all, it gives the team a bad light because other players did it as well. Francisco Lindor, Kevin Pillar. But they went out of their way to note they were doing it tongue-in-cheek. This thumbs down gesture we saw with the Yankees a couple years ago, and that was, accepted to be tongue-in-cheek. Baez opened his mouth and said this is directly in response to the fans. That's such a stupid thing to say, besides being in a contract year, but trying to get fans to like you. Telling them you get a thumbs down for booing you is not how you get fans to cheer. That's how the boos grow even more.
Oh, yeah. Well, an hour before we went on air, this came in my email.
And this is how it gets worse, by the way.
Statement from Mets president Sandy Alderson.
Oh, Lord.
I'll read it verbatim. In a post-game press conference today, Javy Baez stated that his thumbs-down gesture during the game was a message to fans who recently have booed him and other players for poor performance. These comments and any gestures by him or other players with a similar intent are totally unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Mets fans are understandably frustrated over the team's recent performance. The players of the organization are equally frustrated, but fans at Citi Field have every right to express their own disappointment. Booing is every fan's right. The Mets will not tolerate any player gesture that is unprofessional in its meaning or is directed in a negative way toward our fans. I will be meeting with our players and staff to convey this message directly. Mets fans are loyal, passionate, knowledgeable, and more than willing to express themselves. We love them for every one of those qualities. Well, nice. That's actually well-written, good response. Yeah. You have a right to boo. Now, you have people debating on social media.
Now, wait a minute, Matt. This is coming from Sandy Alderson, the guy who signed Javy Baez and went out of his way to get him from Chicago. This is the last guy, maybe outside of Steve Cohen, who should be opening his mouth and responding not only publicly against Baez, but making a statement in general. Okay, it's not like this is an intern or another executive saying this. No, this is the guy who is also just as responsible for the route this Mets team has been on by making virtually zero changes to the team, especially on the offensive front, and getting a guy whose best strength is defense in Javy Baez, who is now, I guess, surprised that fans don't like when you hit 207 when you're expected to be hitting around 250, 270. Get real, man. Come on.
What's the alternative? When there's such a furor, and this happened over a span of hours. This is, all over Sports Center, all over the local news, and everybody's going nuts over this. He kind of had to say something, and the something he said was about what you would expect, which is good.
To me,
he did defend him.
You say something, and you're a general manager, you should be saying something in defense of the player, or something where it's a more blanket statement saying, well, we don't agree with Baez. You try to go down the middle. You don't just actively go out there and essentially call out your players, foolishness when you're a reason why he's even in this position in the first place. Mets President Sandy Alderson should not be making any comments, much less a statement that is going against his own player. Yeah, the statement is right. I agree with it. He's not the guy who should be saying that.
Well, who should be?
Baez, you would hope. But if not,
Baez isn't going to say it. Baez dug his heels. He dug his heels post game.
Well, the other thing is, again, his teammates aren't necessarily backing him up. They're not necessarily against what Baez is saying, but
the last thing you want
that it's been tongue in cheek. So you don't want a response like that from your boss. You don't want to be thrown under the bus, as much as you deserve it.
Well, if he hadn't dug his heels, he might not have been. He dug his heels. He attacked. He criticized the fans.
That was the thing to do from the start.
When the fans were in the right.
I think so.
You stink. You deserve to get booed.
Yeah,
and I've seen it. Every team, even the Yankees, get booed. Oh, Chapman, when he blows a save, he walks off to a chorus of boos. Or when the bullpen screws up, or somebody makes an error that costs a few runs, when the team walks off the field, it gets booed. And that's the Yankees.
The innovators of this thumbs down phenomenon. Remember, they struggled a couple years back and started doing it. And it kind of sparked them to a postseason run before they fell to Houston. And again, a big difference between that is they weren't doing it at the fans. They were doing it into each other, leaving the message open and getting fans on board with the gesture as they were able to rally to a conference final, or rather a division series spot. For Baez to go out there and say you're directing it at the fans because it's your fault. You go 0 for 3, 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts in a game. That's not how you get yourself. But when it comes time for that contract extension, that's not how you cozy up to the team president by actively going against him. Well,
here's the other thing, too. Now, you're probably hearing on 98.7 and 101.9, even as we speak, we're saying the same thing, that don't re-sign this guy. Let him go. And he stuck his foot in his mouth. If he were hitting and saying, "Look, we're doing the best we can, but we've been hitting a spot of bad luck, and we understand. We'll do better." Then there would be no controversy. But instead, it's how dare you boo us? It's like, because you stink.
Yeah, it's not like 90 and he's on the Cubs teams, or even, let's pretend this was happening to the Yankees, where you just finished a 13-game winning streak, you lose a game, the fans boo you, you boo them back. Not, but understandable that because you got on a pretty hot streak, you'd want, your feelings would get a bit hurt for the fans to immediately boo, right after that streak ends. Although they have a fair point. For the Mets, they went 2-10.
They'd shrug their shoulders, said all streaks end. Start another one.
For you, a player on a team that's 2-8 in his last 10 games, coming against the second worst team in the division, is not anything to be proud of. It's
and
great.
Not only that,
not awful. You're just mediocre or average, as they currently.
The rest of your division's mediocre too. Yeah. Your division leader's 10 games over 500 because they got hot recently. Your other rival is at 500. They got hot, and then they came right back down to reality. So, ironically enough, you're still in the race. And if you do make hay while the sun shines, as in beat up on Washington and Miami, you might find yourself back in it. Because we wrote the Yankees off for dead after the 4th of July, and look what they've done.
No, that's absolutely true, but this Mets team has just looked so lost. And a big part of it, again, is the series against LA and San Fran. But even with the victories, it's not like they had a terrific season when compared to the rest of the league. They played average baseball. Today was really their best game because they were able to stack runs in almost every inning. But, they really weren't that impressive for a lot of the week. It was, if anything, their best performer was probably Marcus Stroman. And even though he pitched twice, he was only going to get one win because the Mets couldn't muster up any offense up until yesterday.
Yep.
It's just ridiculous,
It shows you how quickly it can turn around, but it may be too little too late at this point.
And it's not necessarily, defending fans in the sense that they never do stuff wrong. Remember when fans were allowed back in during the NBA playoffs this postseason? There were several issues that during and after games. So, for me, if you're a guy who spilled popcorn on Russell Westbrook and he gives you a thumbs down, yeah, I get it. That's fair game. But to get mad over fans who just want to see this team play like they did 2 months ago. It's not even like that they were asking for something that happened years ago. The Mets were in first place in July. They just want to see that July team back.
Put up more of a fight.
Their fans to do
now,
that.
To the Mets' credit, because a loss is still a loss, they were in every game against the Giants and Dodgers. They didn't get blown out of any of them. Which only proves that if somebody came up with a timely hit, they might have come up with a much better record. But that was, this could be a turning point where somebody puts his foot in his mouth and then the Mets get hot again.
That would be a very Mets thing to do, where a player essentially, becomes hated by his fan base and gets on a hot streak. I mean, I'd love to see that from Javy Baez because, again, sitting 207,
about a guy who's getting heat. Giancarlo Stanton was getting heat. Getting a lot of heat from Yankee fans. And getting booed a little bit, too. Largely because lots of money, lots of past performance, nothing happening lately. Okay, so he gets stuck in the outfield, and all of a sudden his production picks up, and he was a big part of this 13-game winning streak. So now everybody loves Giancarlo Stanton, but that's how easily things can change. Now Stanton, smart guy, never put his foot in his mouth and aroused any of the fans' ire any further. He's basically saying, I haven't performed. They have every right to be upset with me. And then he turned it around, and now everybody loves him. Aaron Judge would get booed if people felt he was underachieving. You know who used to get booed? Mickey Mantle used to get booed. And they used to get booed because everybody expected him to be Babe Ruth when he wasn't Babe Ruth. He was close, but he wasn't Babe Ruth. So even he got booed, even at the peak of his career, because so much more rode on him. So part of being a superstar is getting booed. Did Jeter ever get booed? Nah. But did other guys in the Yankees during those glory years get booed? Sure.
A-Rod all the time. And he won MVP one of the years he was getting booed.
Why? Because he would fade in the postseason. Now, 2009 changed all that because he had a great 2009 run. But, yeah, A-Rod was considered, a choke artist when it really counted. He could rack up the numbers, and nobody ever thought that racking up those numbers got them there, but he would get the heat too. When you have to meet very high expectations, you fall short of them, you're going to get booed. And the
again,
Mets had very high expectations.
Yeah, they were picked by many, including us, to win the division. And for a while, it looked like it was going that way. And, ever since post-All-Star break, this team has lost that luster. And I really, especially with DeGrom out essentially the rest of the season, Syndergaard, he was supposed to get a start pushback. So he tested positive for COVID. I don't see this team making the playoffs unless Atlanta and Philly manages to self-destruct again.
Well, Philly is doing it. Philly is doing it. Atlanta's done it a couple of times. And the Mets do face them down the stretch. Look.
I feel like it's
the opportunity to turn it around is still there.
I feel like we're watching the NFC East again with how bad this division is. Where the Giants are 4-10 on the season, but they are still only a game behind, half a game behind first place.
I'll go back, and we actually mentioned this earlier in the year, to 1973. Yes, 48 years ago, long before everybody was born. But if you take a look, just read up on it a little bit. First of all, the Mets won that division 3 games over 500. That tells you how bad everybody else was. The Mets, a similarly configured team then as now. Great front-end starting pitching and mediocre hitting. But they got hot in the month of September. August, they were under 500. August, they were dead in the water. But they got hot, and everybody else just treaded water, and they snuck by. And then they take on the big red machine in the NLCS, beat them in 5, and they take the Oakland Athletics, the defending world champion, who had beaten the Reds the year before, and took them to 7 games. And people still say, if they just altered the rotation just ever so slightly, they might have won that World Series. 3 games over 500. So it tells you something. That's what this year, this National League East reminds me of. I was a little kid back then. But you still. Oh, speaking of which, Jerry Kuzman last night. Jerry Kuzman, if you're a Met fan, you know who Jerry Kuzman was. There's no doubt about that. He was the number 2 pitcher behind Seaver, the best left-hander they had, and the guy who won the clinching game in the 69 World Series, and was also a big part of the 73 run as well, and ended up winning 20 one year, losing 20 the following year, getting traded to Minnesota, and winning 20 again. Kuzman was a money pitcher. Okay? All great. There's only one problem. I was 4 years old in 1969. A kid who was a preteen or a teenager is nearing retirement age now. Anybody who saw... he played till 1985. So anybody over the age of 50 is old enough to have seen him play. And maybe even over the age of 40, 45. Okay? But the reality is, this number retirement should have been done 20 years ago. Did he deserve to have his number retired? Yes, because he is the second best Mets pitcher ever. But here we are. The guy who should have presented the award is dead. Tom Seaver. So who did they have to bring in? Mike Piazza. And Kuzman even mentioned during his acceptance speech that Piazza was 1 year old in 1969. And Piazza's over 50. So there you go. And part of it was the Will Ponds wouldn't retire anybody's number. If you're not Seaver, you don't rate. Because up until then, they retired Gil Hodges because he died tragically of a heart attack just before the 72 season started. They retired Casey Stengel because he was the first Mets manager ever. But the only player they had retired was Seaver. Nobody else rated. And then when Piazza got in the Hall of Fame, they retired Piazza. Now, who do you think would rate getting their number retired? Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, maybe Gooden and Strawberry. I mean, these guys were great players for the Mets. Now, people might argue, yeah, but they didn't stay with the Mets very long, or they were known for their performance with other teams. Doesn't matter. What they meant to Met fans is how you determine it. Are all Yankee retired numbers in the Hall of Fame? No. A lot of them are, but not all of them. But Jerry Kuzman meant to Met fans at least as much as Ron Guidry did. So that's my speech on Jerry Kuzman last night. I saw the ceremony, and there weren't a lot of guys there. But a couple of years before, they celebrated the 50th anniversary of the 69 team, 2019. And they brought together as many people as they could. And these guys are getting up in years. They're in their 70s. Okay? That was a young team. A lot of guys, 25, under 30. But 30 and 50 is 80. Okay? Yeah. So they're up there. And they all realized that Howie Rose mentioned this on a radio call, believe it or not, last night, that a lot of them realized that was the last time they were going to see each other, the last time they'd be together. Because they're all up in years, and in a couple of years they're going to start to drop. And they lost Seaver.
It is sad, and hopefully this opens the door for more players, numbers to get retired. You mentioned a lot of great players who I think should be considered. From my generation, when I started watching, I think David Wright's the no-brainer. I mean, come on. When I think number 5, there's no one but David Wright.
David
really
Wright.
He's got to be next.
David Wright has one thing going for him, and we mentioned it back then. Of all the Met greats, like Seaver, for example, none of them spent their entire career as a Met, except David Wright.
Yeah, he quite literally, gave his entire career to the Mets. His back issues, being ultimately forced him to retire a bit earlier than he liked. But, he's someone who I think is the no-brainer in terms of someone you got to consider being next to retire.
Well, now, his eligibility for the Hall of Fame, he retired 3 years ago. 18, right?
18.
So, yeah. He's still a couple of years away from Hall of Fame eligibility. I personally believe he should get in. He's got 2 things going for him. An impressive record and no steroid allegations. So he should be good. Now, they did it for Piazza the year he got in. Fair enough. Why not do that for David Wright?
I'd love to see that. He's getting in the year he's eligible. I think he's going to take a bit. You're right. It's going for him is that, as you said, no steroid allegations. A lot of not only the current day, but a lot of just in general Mets records, especially offensively, home runs, etc. He's up there in the team overall. I think he's going to take a team. I'm hopeful. There's other great players who also recently retired. Be interesting to see what happens. Like Carlos Beltran, like Carlos Delgado, Jose Reyes. It's going to be
Jose Reyes. That's a little bit iffy.
No, I don't think he's getting in. I'm just saying he's going to be eligible in a few years.
Yeah, but Jose Reyes, another guy who. The problem I have, you got 2 perspectives. As overall for Cooperstown, no. Wasn't good enough for long enough. But as a Met, I think one of the reasons why the Wilpons were so resistant to retiring numbers is because they felt the Yankees retired too many of them. And you can make the argument. But I'll go through them. Billy Martin. Okay, won a world championship as a manager. That one was a little bit iffy. Not a Hall of Famer, but had his fans, definitely. George among them. Derek Jeter, no-brainer. Hall of Famer, 3,000. Only Yankee with 3,000 hits as a Yankee.
Yeah, him and Mo, I think, are the 2 no-brainers. And Babe Ruth, who's coming up next, obviously. 3 easy no-brainers.
No-brainer. He was the first one to get retired. Correction. He wasn't retired until after he died. So actually several players wore number 3 after him. Gehrig was retired immediately. No brainer. DiMaggio, Mantle, Berra, and Dickey. I combined the two together. Berra and Dickey. Both getting number 8. Maris, just because of that run to 61, even though, among the other Yankee greats, iffy, but still. Rizzuto, Hall of Famer, number 10. Munson, retired literally the day he died. No brainer. Whitey Ford, same thing. Okay. Don Mattingly, not a Hall of Famer, but meant more to his team than anybody in that era.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Agreed.
I'll give you that.
He's the one bright spot of that 80s Yankees era.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees weren't bad back then. They just weren't great.
That was the one era where the Mets could, they claimed that they were the better New York team for an extended period
no doubt.
time. Yeah.
No doubt. Now, 37, Casey Stengel, 10 pennants, 7 World Series. Let's see. 49, Ron Guidry. Reggie Jackson, 44. Reggie Jackson was only there 5 years. How about that?
Three titles in 5 years.
Yeah.
I feel like we're talking about the Yankees, which transitioned probably to what they're doing now. And just that, even though they lost this series, which is, I think, the first time since July, they went on an incredible stretch the last 15 games, going 13-2. Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but just want to complete the list of Yankees. Elson Howard, first black Yankee, longtime coach, and the successor to Yogi Berra as a catcher. Casey Stengel, Mariano Rivera, obviously. Reggie Jackson, Andy Pettitte, second best left-hander they ever had to Whitey Ford, Ron Guidry, and Bernie Williams. There you go.
Great history of great Yankees of all time.
But any of them could take their careers to other teams and rate getting their number retired by them. Any of them. If they were Mets and they played the same way, their numbers would have been retired. In many cases, I think they might have gotten into the Hall of Fame when the guys who didn't might got into the Hall of Fame if they were playing for other teams. But because they're Yankees and there's a logjam of Yankees in the Hall of Fame, I think Don Mattingly, got slighted. Jorge Posada. There's another guy who got retired. But they're trying to represent every era. And when a guy's got 5 rings, the core 4 got their numbers retired.
Mm-hmm.
So, only problem is now everybody wears number 71.
Or 99 in the case of Aaron Judge. But as Zach, as you're about to say, an incredible run. Aaron Judge, a big reason why they were so successful.
Yeah. I miss really Joe Torre. He's number 6. He got his retired. But he had a better record than Miller Huggins. Miller Huggins never wore a number. But as a manager, 6 pennants, 4 rings. Miller Huggins, 6 pennants, 3 rings. And everybody knows what a legend Miller Huggins was.
Not to be confused with Bob Huggins of West Virginia basketball.
No relation.
Yep,
but Miller Huggins was the manager of the Yankees when they acquired Babe Ruth and was the first Yankee manager to win a world championship.
Yeah, I think that's going to be making it very hard to distinguish that type of relation between Bill and Bob, because you get Bill from the 20s and then Bob today.
Miller.
100 years
Miller
later,
Huggins.
So, yeah, it's going to be really impossible unless he's like some sort of great-grandfather.
But here's the thing. The thing is that, hey, Miller Huggins was dead before my parents were even born. Okay? And if my parents were alive now, one would be over 90 and one would be pushing 90. So, yet, as a Yankee fan, damn straight I knew who Miller Huggins was. He's got a plaque in Monument Park.
Just to wrap up, the Yankees talk, it was fun this week watching them. Garrett Cole, first AL pitcher, 13 wins, 200 strikeouts this season. Injuries and missing time because of COVID. He has been unstoppable.
After his time with Houston, he's definitely ready to go. He's definitely ready to continue that race for the AL Cy Young Award.
Absolutely agreed. He's up there for sure. It's a tie race. It's tied to both the AL and the NL, but Garrett Cole is definitely proving his point that he's in the running. And even, Chapman, we get on a lot about it. Get on his case a lot, rightly so, but he became the 31st pitcher in MLB. Yeah, set that started officially being counted in 69. But again, he's the first guy since Kenley Jansen did it a couple seasons ago, and only the second Yankee, Mariano Rivera, to do it. So he's struggled a lot recently, but his last time out, he had a good performance, good enough performance to get the save, although it did, I think, inches away at the warning track. So it'll be fun seeing the Yankees. He will have an incredible offense. Try to keep it up. Aaron Judge, in particular, he led the league this 571, and did a great job just getting on base. 12 hits, had 7 RBIs, a pair of home runs, slugging at 1,000. He has been unstoppable.
Yeah,
Let's take a look at what's coming up for the Yankees, because they are still out on the West Coast, and this is always an issue, and this goes back even when they weren't good or one team was good and the other wasn't. But when both were good, the Angels were a constant thorn in their side. So you got to see, or you do get to see, Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. By the way, the Angels are living proof that merely front-loading your roster doesn't work. You need role players. They had superstars on that team, and look where they are. Mediocre. Okay?
And
they
still
can't,
no Mike Trout for months.
Yeah. But I'm saying is that they, even with Mike Trout, where would they be? They still wouldn't be better in Houston. They still wouldn't be better in Oakland.
Big question now, because since the Angels haven't really done well, even with superstars like Trout and Ohtani, would they even consider trading them at this rate?
I don't think so, but you're going to have to fill their roster out. Now, what we have here is 3 games in Anaheim, and then they come back to play the Orioles. So they shouldn't have too much trouble this week. The Mets also have an opportunity to make hay, because what they're doing is they're going to be playing the Marlins. And they've got a doubleheader against the Marlins on Tuesday, 31st, and then they start September with 2 more games against the Marlins. Then they go down to Washington and Miami, and they have 3 more against the Yankees. And then they get the Cardinals, Phillies, Red Sox, Brewers, and Marlins to finish out the schedule. So, opportunity still knocks for them, especially because the other teams in their division aren't that great either.
Yeah,
but
those are must-win games, and they need to take advantage of that if they want to get back into the race.
Absolutely. Now, it is 11:57 and 6 seconds. And Zach, do the honors. What's coming up this week on WUSB for Seawolf Sports?
Recap for Giants and Jets. So the Giants finished their preseason tonight against the Patriots. Daniel Jones finally getting some action in the preseason, but still raises a lot of question marks with his playmaking ability and the offensive line. It's still going to be a work in progress, and hopefully they can get their act down as soon as they can. Meanwhile, for the Jets, Zach Wilson didn't play due to the coach's decision, and really, a really nice Hail Mary in the tie against the Eagles.
Yeah, that was good.
Probably still puts up some fun answers for questions for the Jets on how they'll play this season.
So
it is going to be interesting watching these two New York teams, especially question marks on offense for the Giants. That O-line did not have a great showing today. Daniel Jones, I thought, picked it up at the end of the second quarter, but he struggled early out the gate. Zach Wilson had probably the best preseason a quarterback had that's going to be starting week 1. So it's going to be fun to watch, Zach.
Yeah, well, it's going to be.
NFL preview next week.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. And this next week, only practices for all 32 NFL teams. And injury bugs really devastating most of them, including J.K. Dobbins out with an ACL for the Ravens, Travis Etienne out with a Lisfranc injury, and Cam Akers out with an Achilles injury. And I think for the Rams, that could probably for the Ravens, actually, with their injury for J.K. Dobbins, that probably might prompt them to think about Todd Gurley, who they did work out back in June.
But the Seawolves games count. Men's soccer tomorrow, correct?
Yep, that is the first on our plate for this upcoming week. And then on Thursday, we have Stony Brook football for the first time since March. And it's going to be, as we said earlier before, they will be hosting the Max Brosmer-less New Hampshire Wildcats. And I said that because Brosmer is presumably their best starting quarterback over the last few seasons, but due to an injury, he will not play this Thursday. It will be the backup, Brett Edwards.
Okay, so 11:59, 33 seconds. It's time to call it a week, call it a night here on the sports section. On behalf of the WUSB Sports Department, Ken Fermin and Zach Wilson, I'm Matt Mankiewich. Many thanks also to Allie Kennedy for her guest appearance tonight. We'll be hearing more from Kylie Oldmiller next week and also NFL preview, so be ready.